Here we go. Hello, and thank you for watching this program on the Medicare ABN form. There's no audio taping or videotaping allowed, and any unauthorized reproduction, dispensing, forwarding, or copying of this target coding presentation is illegal. The information in this presentation is for educational purposes. It's not intended to be a substitute for your thorough clinical decision making. It's not intended to be legal advice. Target coding does not engage in providing legal services. CPT is a registered trademark of the AMA. Every attempt has been made to make certain that the information in this presentation is 100% accurate. However, it's not guaranteed. A little bit about myself before we get going. Again, my name is Dr. Marty Kotler. I'm a chiropractor. I'm also certified in CPT coding. I'm a certified professional compliance officer. My areas of expertise include CPT and ICD-10 coding, Medicare, HIPAA compliance, chiropractic record keeping, treatment plans, and creating compliant cash plans. I've written many training manuals on chiropractic documentation and compliance. I write articles for chiropractic economics and dynamic chiropractic, and I'm a guest speaker at many state association conferences nationwide. Okay, let's begin. The ABN form, by the way, ABN stands for Advanced Beneficiary Notice of Non-Coverage. That's the formal name of this form. Let's go over some of the key points. The ABN form is mandatory when you are about to perform a service on a Medicare patient that is normally paid and now it's not going to get paid for some reason. So the ABN form is a form that the provider must issue to a Medicare patient before providing a non-payable yet normally covered service. That's the key right there. Spinal manipulation is normally covered. So that's the most important item to remember when it comes to the ABN form. The ABN will inform a patient that a normally covered service like spinal manipulation for active treatment is now not going to be covered due to a specific reason. The most common reason is maintenance care. So the intent of the form is to notify a patient that Medicare is probably not going to pay. This allows the patient to make a decision about whether or not to receive the service. The only Medicare-covered chiropractic service is spinal manipulation, and that relates to three codes, 98940, 98941, and 98942. So chiropractors must issue ABNs when spinal manipulation is expected not to be covered. Now, you should not give an ABN to a Medicare patient unless you have some genuine doubt. You're not supposed to give a Medicare patient an ABN form to sign in advance of going over the service and having blank ABNs and then filling them out later. The ABN must be verbally reviewed with the patient or the patient's representative. Now, once the ABN is complete, you keep the original. Give a copy to the patient. Now, if you do not issue a valid ABN to a Medicare patient when required, if you accepted money, you're going to have to give the money back to the patient. You cannot bill the patient. The provider is financially liable. You may use an ABN as a voluntary notice to alert Medicare patients about their financial liability for non-covered services. So, example, exams, x-rays, therapies. Do you have to use an ABN? No, but Medicare says you could if you would like to. I don't recommend it. I don't recommend you use an ABN for the non-covered services. I'll go over that in a few minutes. An ABN is not required to bill a Medicare patient for a service that's not a Medicare benefit. Again, exams, x-rays, you don't have to use an ABN. I know many of you do. A lot of doctors use ABNs even for the exams, x-rays, and therapies. I'll go over the pros and cons of that a little bit later, but you don't have to use an ABN for non-covered services. How long should you keep the ABN? 5 years. You could issue an ABN to cover an extended course of treatment. For example, you have a patient on maintenance care coming once a month, and every month it's exactly the same situation. Well, then that ABN could be used for 1 year duration. Now, I recommend you have an ABN signed on every maintenance visit. I'll go over that a little bit later as to why I think you should do that. So the ABN must be signed in order for you to collect money for the spinal manipulation. You're prohibited from issuing ABNs on a routine basis where there's no reasonable basis. Many CAs that I speak to, they go, Marty, Dr. Kotler, I never know if Medicare is going to pay. Medicare drives me crazy. I don't know if they're going to pay, not pay, so I just have patients sign ABNs on day one for spinal manipulation just in case it's not covered. That's not okay. That's not a reasonable basis. By using the AT modifier with spinal manipulation, you're telling Medicare that you believe the service is medically necessary. You've read the Medicare guidelines. That modifier, AT, tells Medicare a lot of information. Next, providers must get familiar with the Medicare guidelines. You should get a copy of the Medicare guidelines for your state. Use the AT modifier for spinal manipulation for active treatment. Expect to get paid. You should get paid. You will get paid most of the time. If for some reason you don't get paid, then why? Appeal it if you have to. You may or may not need to use ABNs with Medicare Advantage plans. So we recommend you follow all the Medicare guidelines with Medicare Advantage plans until you check with that Medicare Advantage plan to see if you should do anything different. Now, the big transition to the requirement of using the ABN form comes when you get to wellness care or maintenance care. See, if a patient comes in with neck pain and back pain, and you treat them for 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 visits, and after the pain is gone, the patient decides, I'm not coming in anymore, I feel great. In that case, you didn't have to use an ABN form at all. So let's talk about the difference between active treatment and maintenance care. Active treatment, according to Medicare, is this: a patient's condition is considered acute when the patient is being treated for a new injury identified by x-rays or exam, and the results is going to be an improvement or an arrest of the patient's condition. That's active treatment. Medicare also covers chronic care. A patient's condition is considered chronic when it is not expected to completely resolve, but where the continued therapy can be expected to result in some functional improvement. So you have to prove that the patient is improving from a functional standpoint in order for it to be considered a payable service. Once the patient remains stable, they come in for a couple of visits and they've plateaued or they've reached maximum therapeutic benefit, and you're not expecting any additional functional improvement, boom, that's when it becomes maintenance care, and maintenance therapy is not covered by Medicare. So that's when you have to have that conversation with the patient. I'll go over that in a few minutes. Maintenance care, according to Medicare, are services that seek to prevent disease, promote health, prolong and enhance the quality of life, prevent deterioration of a chronic condition. Sounds like good stuff, right? But that's not covered according to Medicare. So chiropractic maintenance care is not payable by Medicare. Chiropractic maintenance care, I don't know any insurance companies that pay for chiropractic maintenance care. Now let's touch on Medicare modifiers. Medicare modifier AT is used for active treatment. This could be acute, chronic, and exacerbation. You're going to use the AT modifier only on 3 codes, 98940, 41, and 42. The AT modifier is meant to represent to Medicare that the care was medically necessary. You would not use the AT modifier with maintenance care. So again, those 2 little letters, A and T, it tells Medicare that you understand the Medicare guidelines, that the patient has a painful neuromusculoskeletal condition caused by a subluxation via exam and x-ray, and that condition is preventing the patient from doing their normal activities of daily living. So all of that, just with those 2 letters, A and T. Modifier GA. GA tells Medicare that you have a signed ABN form on file. So the ABN form is used when a covered service is expected to be denied due to lack of medical necessity. If a treatment of the Medicare patient is maintenance care, therefore it would be considered not medically necessary, not insurance reimbursable. That's when you're going to have to offer the patient the ABN form. If you have some genuine doubt that Medicare will not pay, give the patient the choice to receive the services. You're going to submit the claim to Medicare if the patient checks option 1, checks yes to option 1. Now, we're going to get into that in detail. I would prefer the patient check option 2, but can't force a patient to check option 2. S8990, that is the wellness code, the maintenance code. It's manipulation performed for maintenance rather than restoration. I don't recommend you use that to bill Medicare. I don't see it working. For some reason, they're not accepting that HIPAA code. Those are codes that begin with a letter. I've had a few of my clients be guinea pigs and send in the S8990. It always comes back. Patient may not be billed. Provider liability. So I don't recommend you use S8990 to bill Medicare for maintenance care. You would use 98940 GA or 41 GA or 42 GA. Modifier GY, I recommend you use the GY on all non-spinal manipulation services. So you would use GY on exams, x-rays, extremity adjustments, modalities, therapeutic procedures. Don't use GY on maintenance care. So there's an example. Examination 99203 GY. GZ, hopefully you'll never have to use the GZ modifier because that tells Medicare that you should have had an ABN signed, but you didn't. So use GZ when an ABN should have been signed, but it wasn't. This is a modifier that's a measure of good faith towards Medicare that you recognize you made an error. You may not collect payment from the patient. So hopefully you never have to use the GZ modifier. Okay, so now the ABN form. If you want to get more details than this webinar on the ABN form, you want to get extreme details, then go to the Medicare Claims Processing Manual. You can Google this and find it. Chapter 30, Section 50. Now, the ABN form is a one-page form, correct? It's a one-page form. Well, there's a 39-page instruction manual on this one form. So if you want to read up on that, there's the link where you can go find all the extreme details on the ABN form. And here's what the ABN form looks like blank. Now, there was a new ABN form that became effective just a couple of months ago. Really not that much different than the previous one. So the new one, you should take a look in the bottom left corner. You see the expiration date, 3/2020. That is the new form. The old form said 3/11, so this is 3/2020, and there's also in the bottom under the signature and date section, it says this is also new. CMS does not discriminate in its programs and activities. To request this publication in an alternative format, please call 1-800-MEDICARE. So that's information for the patient. If a patient doesn't know how to read English, there's the opportunity for them to get the form in a different format, and then the expiration date was updated. So those were the two major, minor changes, I would call them, to the ABN form. Everything else was the same. So there's 10 customizable areas. Areas A through F you can complete prior to giving the form to the patient. Area G is the option box. The patient has to choose an option. Area I is where the patient must sign the form, and J is where the patient has to enter the date. So this is what the form looks like. You can go ahead and find this on the internet. You can Google the Medicare ABN form. So that's what it looks like blank, but you don't want to see one. You want to see one filled out, right? So here we go. This is the ABN form completed for wellness care, maintenance care. So when would you present this form to the patient? On the first visit? No. The patient doesn't come in and say, I feel great. I'm here for a chiropractic tune-up. I would like to come in once a month. Now, that did happen a couple of times over 16 years in practice. I probably had 5 patients over 16 years come into my office and go, I feel great, Dr. Kotler. I just want to get an adjustment once every few weeks or once a month. I don't have any problems. I've been going to chiropractors for years. I just moved to your area. I'd like to just pick up and get some chiropractic wellness care. So then I would use this ABN form if it was a Medicare patient on the first day. But that's rare. Most patients come in, pain, stiffness, tightness, difficulty moving. So we're not going to use this ABN form for maintenance care on the first visit for spinal manipulation. So what visit would you use this form? Well, I mentioned a little earlier that if a patient comes in and if the patient comes in and gets 6, 8, 10, 12 adjustments for active treatment, and then they stop coming in and they never come back, well, you didn't have to use an ABN form in that case. So let's talk about the visit where the patient comes in. It's prior to you giving them the form. I call it the pre-ABN form talk. So, Mr. Evans, over the last few visits, you've mentioned to me that you're really feeling much better. You've told me your pain scales are down. You told me you're able to ride your bike. You're going to the gym. You're doing a lot of your normal activities of daily living. So, Mr. Evans, when you come in on your next visit, if you're still doing really well, I need to talk to you about wellness care, maintenance care, and that's not something that Medicare covers. Okay, Mr. Evans, we'll see you on your next visit. Walk into the room, next visit. How you doing, Mr. Evans? He says, great. Okay, so Mr. Evans, based on your outcome assessment forms you filled out, what you've told me, what I find during my exams, you have less spasm, less subluxation. In my opinion, you've reached maximum therapeutic benefit. That's the good news. This is the good news, bad news visit. The good news is, Mr. Evans, you've reached maximum therapeutic benefit wellness care. The bad news is Medicare doesn't cover it. And this is one analogy I like to give. You know, Mr. Evans, if you were driving your car and your transmission fell out, Medicare will buy you a new transmission. But if you're driving your car and you need an oil change, Medicare doesn't cover oil changes. So that's the stage of care you're in right now. A little tune-up, a little oil change. I recommend you keep coming in. What would you like to do? Some patients will say no. Some patients will say yes. If the patient says, yes, I would like to continue to come in, that's when you have to get the form that you see on your screen. Fill out the top with your information. Under the services, it says chiropractic spinal manipulation, reason Medicare may not pay. Medicare doesn't pay for chiropractic manipulation of the spine for maintenance care. You have to put in the fee that you're going to be charging the patient. If you have to give a range, you can, but there should be the fee that the patient is paying you on the form. And then the patient has to choose an option box. Option 1, I want the chiropractic maintenance care. You may ask to be paid now, so that should solve any questions. A lot of questions come up. Well, can I have the patient pay me for maintenance care right on that visit? It says it right there in option 1. I want the chiropractic maintenance care. You may ask to be paid now, but I also want Medicare billed. Okay. So if the patient checks option 1, we have to bill because the patient wants us to. So in that case, how would you bill that? 98940 for 1 or for 2 with the GA modifier. Option 2 says, I want the chiropractic maintenance care, but do not bill Medicare. I like that better. If I know I'm delivering maintenance care, it's not covered, and the patient says, no, don't bother billing Medicare, I got it, and they just pay me, I like that better. Less administrative work, less burden on my staff, less posting. So to me, that's the ideal situation. Get the patient to wellness care as soon as possible. And if they check option 2, to me, now that's a true cash patient. Now, what about the first visit? This is what I recommend on the first visit. Just a general statement. Dear Medicare patient, Medicare doesn't cover exams, x-rays, therapies. Put down the fee that you charge, and whatever else you do, orthotics, decompression, laser, surface EMG, vitamins, TENS machines, traction devices, whatever you do, put on this list, put down the fees, and then the patient has to acknowledge, I understand that Medicare doesn't cover these services. I agree to pay for these services. I've had time to ask questions about my financial obligation. I acknowledge I'm signing this voluntarily. I understand I have the right to refuse care, and that by signing this form, I'm fully responsible. I like this better. There's no options. You're in control. If the patient says, please bill Medicare for the exams, I will. But if the patient doesn't ask me to bill for an exam or x-rays or therapies, and the patient doesn't have a supplemental insurance or secondary that'll pick it up, you don't have to bill Medicare for non-covered services. Now, if you want to use an ABN for the non-covered services, here you go. This is what it would look like. You just list exams, x-rays, extremity adjustments, modalities. These are not payable by Medicare when delivered by or ordered by a doctor of chiropractic. Put down the fee you're going to be charging, and you should be charging for these services. Don't give them away for free. And then the patient has choices. You see, this is where I feel like the ABN form can get very confusing to a patient on the initial visit. Some patients, they go to doctors that are in Medicare, and the patient also has AARP, for example. These patients, they don't pay for anything when they go to some doctors because that doctor happens to accept Medicare and AARP. So many patients that have that, they don't pay anything when they go to the doctor. So now if a patient comes to you, Mrs. Williams walks into your office and you go, Mrs. Williams, the exam is $95. Don't use that fee. It's just for educational purposes. Okay, so Mrs. Williams, the exam is $95. Mrs. Williams might go, whoa, what are you talking about? I don't pay anything when I go to the doctor. You know, you might have patients like that. I don't pay. Well, Mrs. Williams, Medicare doesn't cover exams when done by a chiropractor. What? I don't understand. Why do I have to pay? You know, it could get confusing. And then you give them the form, this form, where it says, I want the chiropractic non-covered services, but I also want you to bill Medicare. Option 2 says, I want the chiropractic non-covered services, but do not bill Medicare. You see, if the patient checks option 2, and they have a good supplement or a good secondary insurance that'll pick up the exams, now they've told you not to bill for the exam. You see how that can get confusing? This is a very confusing form, I feel, for a Medicare patient that's never seen it. And there's most of the time when a Medicare patient comes into a chiropractic office, they're seeing the ABN form for the first time. Now, let's talk a little bit about Medicare policies and procedures, also known as OIG compliance. What does OIG stand for? OIG stands for Office of Inspector General. The purpose, the mission of the OIG is to protect federally funded programs like Medicare, Medicaid. Now, since chiropractic is a covered service in the Medicare program, the OIG oversees it. They do analysis. There have been 8 reports on chiropractic over the last 10 years. And most of them are negative and not good. And they say that we have not been good at documenting, and we shouldn't have been paid for many services. This is the most recent one last year, where it said hundreds of millions of dollars in Medicare payments for chiropractic services did not comply with Medicare requirements. So the OIG watches chiropractic. These are some of their findings. 82% error rate, which I just don't get it. I've been traveling across the country for the last 10 years, educating chiropractors on proper Medicare documentation. Just about every state association puts on seminars. The ACA, the ICA does seminars and webinars. I find it hard to believe after 10 years we still have an 82% error rate. I just don't get it. But because of the most recent findings by the OIG, there's probably going to be more audits occurring. There's a big audit going on right now in a few states. So you just need to be careful and make sure you have Medicare policies and procedures. So the main purpose of Medicare compliance, OIG compliance, is to prevent billing and coding errors. The main purpose of HIPAA compliance is to protect patient personal information like their social security number, their credit card numbers, and health information like their insurance ID numbers and diagnosis. So OIG, or Medicare compliance, is all about preventing billing and coding errors. HIPAA is about protecting patient information. Now, getting paid for services that are not medically necessary, that could be considered fraud and or abuse. So if you bill Medicare for a maintenance visit that you put down as active, that could be considered billing fraud. Yeah, I know that sounds crazy. Just got to be careful. So how do you provide proof that you are making formal efforts to prevent fraud and abuse? Well, a Medicare policy and procedure manual can provide the proof. A Medicare compliance program is based on the requirements from the OIG Compliance Program Guidance for Individual and Small Group Physician Practices. That was put out many years ago. Now, here's the thing. If you see Medicare patients, a Medicare Policy and Procedure Manual is required. And it should consist of these 7 essentials. Written policies and procedures. You need to conduct regular staff trainings, have open lines of communication. You need to name a compliance officer, conduct internal audits. I'm going to show you how to do that in a couple of minutes, respond to detected offenses, and enforce proper disciplinary practices. So start putting together a Medicare policy and procedure manual with policies like this. I've put together one for my clients. If anybody's interested in learning how to get a Medicare policy and procedure manual, contact us. It's only about 30 pages. It's not a big deal. I think it's pretty easy to implement. And we go through all of these different 18 policies and procedures, how to do an internal audit, how to look up all staff members in the OIG exclusion list, how to do training, documentation, accurate billing, record retention, corrective action plans. What do you do if you get overpaid? Compliance concerns, disciplinary action, exit interviews. So here's a couple here. Internal auditing and monitoring. This is something that if you see Medicare patients, you are required to do a self-check, a self-test. It's like looking in the mirror before you go out. You want to make sure everything is looking good. So you're supposed to take a couple of charts. I've narrowed it down to 3 to 5 charts every 4 to 6 months. So I don't know, a couple of hours every 4 to 6 months, you're going to take out some patient charts. And I've put together a little chart audit tool. It's a checklist. Is the patient's name and date on the SOAP note? Did you put down the areas of subluxation? Do you have the subjective findings, the objective findings, the part exam? Did you sign the note? All these different things. Are the bones listed? Did you use the right modifiers? And then you'll score yourself. So that's a internal audit. Another thing that you need to do is every person, not just the doctors, every person that works for you as an employee, if you see Medicare patients, go to the OIG exclusion list, put their name in. If their name doesn't show, print it out and put that in your policy and procedure manual that you've made an effort to check to see if the person's been excluded from the Medicare program. You see, if you hire a staff person or a doctor that excluded from the Medicare program and you're receiving payments, and that person works in your office, big problem. Fines, penalties, it's a big issue. And here's a couple of other forms, like a form that the compliance officer should sign. You need to log your trainings in. Many times I speak to doctors. Do you do trainings? Yes. Do you write them down? No. Do you write down who attended? No. Do you write down the topic of the meeting? No. We just get together pre-shift. We have a little team huddle before each shift. We go over a few things, but nothing's written down. That's a mistake. Write it down so you have proof that you are doing employee training. So here's an example. The topic was reviewing EOBs and ABN forms. Beth, Carrie, Debbie were there. Everybody signs in. There's another list that I've put together specifically for chiropractors, like we utilize an open adjusting room. We make good faith attempts to keep our conversations at a low level. We offer every patient the opportunity to be treated in a private room if requested. And other things about adjusting the entire spine, but only billing for the medically necessary areas. So this is part of a Medicare policy and procedure manual, how to do background checks, exit interviews. I strongly recommend it. No, forget, I don't strongly recommend it. The federal government recommends it. It's not my recommendation. So here's a couple of questions I think we'll have a little fun with. Can you treat Medicare patients without being enrolled in the Medicare program? The answer is no. You must be enrolled in the Medicare program. Many times I speak to doctors that say, I'm not in Medicare. Medicare patients come in, they pay me cash. I don't bill Medicare. Is that okay? Absolutely not. That's illegal. If a Medicare patient walks into a chiropractor's office for spinal manipulation, you are required by law to bill Medicare for that spinal adjustment. You can't say, I'm not in Medicare. I was never in Medicare. I don't know. I think my number ran out, or I used to work in another facility. I used to have a number there. I don't have. No, we don't bill Medicare. Illegal. Can you collect cash from Medicare patients without billing Medicare? Yes. I mentioned it earlier. Patient comes in for wellness care. They check option 2 on the ABN form. Great. Have you revalidated your Medicare organizational profile within the last 3 years? You're going to be asked to do that. It's not voluntary. You're going to get a letter. Don't do it until you get a letter from Medicare asking you to revalidate. When you revalidate, be careful. I was just working with a doctor, went into never revalidated when he switched from individual to group. He's been practicing as if he's a par. He's been officially non-par for the last 7 years. Didn't know it. Can DCs opt out of Medicare? The answer is no. Medical doctors can, chiropractors cannot, physical therapists cannot. Opting out is a private contract that you create with the patient. And there's a list of providers that Medicare gives that can opt out. Chiropractors are not on the list of providers that can opt out. Now, this is always a hot topic when I do this in a live seminar setting. So I've provided you with the proof here. If you look in the bottom right corner, this is right from Medicare. It says, can chiropractors opt out of Medicare? It says chiropractors may not opt out of Medicare, noting that opting out and being non-par are not the same things. So here's some action steps. You want to prevent problems, just like you teach your patients how to prevent back problems and neck problems and prevent subluxations. You want to prevent problems in your practice. You need to be proactive. Medicare, your state board, your malpractice insurance company, they all expect you to know what to do. And you never want to be accused of willful neglect, meaning that you're just saying, I didn't know, I don't care, reckless indifference, intentional failure. Not good. A couple of more action steps. Make sure you get a hold of your local Medicare guidelines for chiropractic. Read them. You should read the policies from all the health plans you bill on chiropractic. Review them with your staff. If you do that, log them into your Medicare policy and procedure manual. Attend seminars, webinars. Jot down, even today's webinar, jot down that you attended a Medicare webinar on the ABN form. Then there's proof that you attended it. Read books, watch videos, review your patient notes with a certified coder. A chiropractic Medicare policy and procedure manual can prevent audits. It'll help you sleep better at night. I call it SWAN. SWAN means sleep well at night. Plus, it can improve your office efficiency. I'm working with one doctor, was audited by Medicare. Due to the audit, this provider has now improved the efficiency between the back office and the front office. Because of the audit, the doctor disclosed that there was some problems with what the doctor was doing and what the CAs were entering into the system. So we worked on tweaking that, fixing it, so that problem will never happen again. The only way you're going to do that is if you do a self-check, a self-audit. So just a few closing comments. Please check with all the carriers you bill prior to submitting claims based on this information to ensure that it's compliant. Target coding does not guarantee that this information will guarantee payment from any insurance company or patient. Target coding is not responsible for any laws and rules that may change following this presentation, and you know they change all the time. So do your best to stay on top of these changes. Attend seminars, webinars, join your national and state professional associations. All right, here's our contact information. Email is info@targetcoding.com. Website, targetcoding.com. Telephone number, 1-800-270-7044. Our HIPAA secure fax number is 1-844-831-2347. Why do we have a HIPAA secure fax number? Because we are considered a business associate to many providers throughout the country. So we are required to take the same standards as a healthcare provider and protecting patient health information. So when our clients send us stuff via fax, it has to go into a HIPAA secure area, so that's why we have a HIPAA secure fax number. Couple of things about what we offer here at Target Coding. Yes, we offer a Medicare policy and procedure manual. Goes through all these policies. Again, it's about 30 pages. It's not that complicated, and you will get a personalized policy and procedure manual. We'll give you all the chart audit tools, all the forms, sample training logs. Let us know if you're interested. Now, if you want to take it to the next step, HIPAA compliance is a whole nother ballgame. Remember the difference between Medicare compliance and HIPAA compliance. HIPAA compliance is about protecting patient health information. It has nothing to do with billing and coding. OIG, Medicare compliance, it's all about billing and coding. So we offer a full-service HIPAA compliance program. I think it's the best one on the market in the chiropractic industry because it's got cloud-based storage portal. You get $100,000 of cyber liability insurance is included just in case you have a breach or something. You need to hire an attorney. You get coverage. We have training videos that staff can watch at any time. We help you track your business associates. The HIPAA compliance program includes the Medicare compliance program. That's a limited time. Let us know if you're interested. And then we also have some books that we sell. This is our best-selling book. It's on the best chiropractic ICD-10 and CPT codes to improve reimbursement. It shows you how to pair your codes together, which is very important, just like pairing wine and food. We show you how to pair your CPT codes and diagnosis codes. We give you some cheat sheets on the long-term treatment diagnosis codes. And, oh, this is one of the best parts of the book in Section 3. Let's say you are going to use cervical brachial syndrome as a diagnosis. We give you the ortho, neuro, and chiro tests to support it. And there's a section on frequently asked questions. Like, what's the difference between radiculopathy and myelopathy? What's the difference between effusion and swelling and edema? What's the difference between a disc disorder and a disc displacement? All important stuff when you're running a practice. We do seminars and tons of webinars. Some of our webinars are free, like this one. Some there's a charge. Some are CE approved. We also offer basic memberships and gold member and platinum memberships. We offer a free consultation, so we offer a lot here. Here's our contact information again, info@targetcoding.com, website targetcoding.com, telephone number 1-800-270-7044, HIPAA secure. Fax number is 1-844-831-2347. I want to thank everybody for attending. I hope you learned a lot.